Okay, now we are live. Welcome, Eugene.
Invitation.
I hope is everything okay. Por favor, decirme en el chat si se escucha bien. I'm gonna say a little bit, few words in Spanish to explain that the interview is gonna be in English.
Sure.
Sadly, we don't speak Spanish, both of us, but we'll translate it with a subtitle later, so it's gonna be easy to understand for the Spanish people who don't speak English. La charla va a ser en inglés. Eugene es un jugador de póker, es jugador de póker ucraniano que vivió bastante tiempo en Estados Unidos y que justamente el inicio del conflicto entre Rusia y Ucrania le pilló en Kiev y contó un poco su salida del país en Twitter, que la verdad es que fue desgarrador. Así que nos contará un poquito cómo fue todo y ya subiré la charla con subtítulos en español para que el que no hable inglés pues que pueda entenderlo. So we're gonna start. Eugene, first of all, how are you? Everything is okay now for you and your family?
Yeah. So right now, yeah, we're I guess as good as you can be under the circumstances. I mean, everyone's very much in shock and kind of. I don't think any of my friends have really processed what's going on, but but I think my wife, her friends, her family, a lot of her friends' families have now, many have been able to make it out and are kind of safe in Europe, and we still have a lot of friends who are also in Ukraine, but thankfully most of them are safe. I mean, there are some tragic stories that we know, but thankfully not to anyone that we know super close. So for now, we're safe.
Yeah, when we are saying now that we are fine, we are fine. It's like it's not for real. seeing the
Yeah.
circumstances is the best you can be right now, especially in your case that you were located in Ukraine when the war or the conflict started. Are you living in Ukraine right now in when everything happened, or you just
Yeah,
were visiting?
so I grew up in the U.S. I'm a U.S. citizen. For the last 5 years or so, I've been living in Ukraine. I met my wife there, and I've been living there, well, for multiple reasons. Because of my wife, she has a business. My business is in Europe, in Switzerland and Italy and Spain.
Hmm.
It's called Clash Esports Business. So it just makes sense for me to be in this time zone, in the European time zone, rather than the US one. And I really kind of just fell in love with Ukraine as well. So I really kind of enjoyed living there, and I kind of imagined being there for a long time. So yeah, so I've been there for the last 5 years.
Yeah, as I know, you were born in Kiev. Is the same city where you're living now, or you have a different city?
Yeah, yeah. I was born in Kiev, and then we emigrated to the U.S. when I was 10 years old, and now I've basically up until 2 weeks ago I was living in Kiev again.
So basically, is get you in the you were there in the moment that everything happened. How this started? Like it looked like a big thing at the beginning, or you just it was like a little situation in one single town or city, or from the beginning looked like something huge.
I think no one expected it to be, at least no one I knew expected it to get as bad as it did. I think everyone expected that there would be, some, something would happen, maybe on the border, maybe in the Donbass region, but no one expected tanks to be, entering the city. No one expected, missiles to be hitting Kiev or Kharkiv or, any of the major cities. No one expected an escalation like that. No one expected an actual war. So, a lot of people certainly thought that Kiev would definitely be safe. It was just hard to imagine, and it's that 2022, in this day and age, that there would be a major invasion, a war in Europe. It was just something completely unimaginable. It was just hard to believe, and we just thought, like, Putin would have to be completely insane to do something like that, because it would just be suicidal. So it just didn't seem to make sense. So yeah, so basically we made some plans, some emergency plans, just in case we were wrong, but we decided to remain in Kiev. Some of the emergency plans, we just, we prepared some, basically, I put like my passport, our marriage certificate, some jewelry, some valuables, maybe some cash. We put it together in one place, like in one bag. We decided, starting from about a month ago, we said, let's make sure our car always has a full tank of gas. So basically, to be ready that if something does happen, we can leave. We can quickly leave within, just 30 minutes or something.
Yeah, this is something that basically everybody's doing right now in Ukraine. I mean, as bigger is getting everything, as more days is happening, more people is preparing things like just to have it ready when they go. Even I listened one interview from one guy who is working with 88 in Lviv. That is basically is one city where so many gaming companies have office, especially for the IT part. Uh, the own government or the old mayor of the city came to their houses saying, explaining what they have to do in case something happened. Lviv, for the ones who don't know about Ukraine much, is one of the most the safest city right now because it's not located very near to Donbass and all this area. But all the cities doing this, like preparing the citizens to know how to act in case something happened.
Uh, obviously, if you look at the geography of Ukraine, you have Lviv, which is all the way on the west of Ukraine. It's right on the border with Poland. So it would be the hardest for Russia to get to. So it was always considered to be like kind of like the safest, or at least the last that Russia would try to get to. So that's why a lot of people from Kharkiv or Kiev thought that if an invasion does happen, uh, it would make sense to just go west, close to the border with Europe and with NATO. So if that's what you're
Yeah.
asking, or were you asking something
Yeah,
else?
what I mean is that if there is the government itself is explaining the citizen how to act in case something happened, or this is happening right now, and when you leave the country, still was like, okay, this is a little fight, it's gonna be over soon, or from the beginning, the citizen knew what they have to do in every
No,
situation.
I think the government, the Ukrainian government, before the conflict, kept saying that there would be no conflict, that this is just a scare tactic by Russia. So they certainly downplayed it a lot. As I said, it didn't seem. Besides the U.S. government, it seemed like everyone was confident. Everyone was pretty confident that it would never get this far. So at least as far as I know, I don't think there were any kind of warnings from the Ukrainian government.
So I guess it's getting worse
About
right
what to
now.
do.
As the war is getting worse, the citizens are getting more prepared by the government, I guess.
Well, there's already, as of yesterday, there's already 3 million people that left Ukraine, that 3 million refugees. And keep in mind, these are mostly women, kids, and
Yeah.
elderly people, because Ukrainian men who are between 18 and 60 are not allowed to leave the country.
This is one
Um,
question I want to ask you, because someone asked you like why you can't leave the country if you are a man between 18 and 16, 60 years old, that you basically are forced to go to military. The thing is that you have a double nationality. You are Ukrainian, but you are also
no,
USA, no? From the
no, I'm
USA.
not double national. I'm only
Okay,
USA.
only USA. So
I'm
you are
I'm
USA
only
US citizen, so that's why you can leave the country anytime.
Yeah, I'm essentially a foreigner in Ukraine, yeah,
Okay.
legally speaking. So, yeah, so that's why just like every other foreigner is
Okay.
allowed to leave, but it's different. So it's obviously tragic because all these families have kind of been split, and Europe hasn't seen that many refugees kind of cross the border in God knows how long. So, yeah, it's been messy.
You have so many friends, I guess, that many of them leave the country as you. And in fact, I'm going to ask you later about the with who you travel during all the way. But I guess you have also so many friends, men friends, that they are in the military right now in the front. How is dealing with that? You know the family. You know you're talking with them. It's a hard situation, I guess.
Yeah, everyone is different because it's not that every male who remains is in the military in Ukraine. Basically, the only people the only people who are actually taken to the military are actual people who have experience in the military or who are like reservists essentially. So it's not like they just take citizens and give you a gun and say go fight. Like that didn't happen. Like that would only be like a last case
This
scenario,
will
which which
be
we
the worst
which would
situation
which
ever.
this would be the worst situation exactly. So the first people to actually go and fight are actually people who are who've been in the army, who have experience
Mhm.
in some fighting. Now there were some stories where some people who volunteered to go fight, they were given at least like 3 days worth of training, so that was like the which is
Not
obviously nowhere near
not
enough
too
to be
much.
able to fight. Um, but for the most part, most of the people that I know that remained are not soldiers. I know some soldiers who are in the front line who are fighting, but they were, they as I said, they were in the army before. Um, but most of the people that I know are actually doing volunteer work. So they're actually in Ukraine. They're like driving humanitarian goods. They're helping regular people who may not have access to goods, if they're able to, right? And then some people, and then obviously there were some kind of tragic stories in the sense that like one. We have a designer that works for Clash, my company, and he was literally in the worst place possible when this conflict started. He was in it's a city called Gostomel. It's near Kiev. It's where the Russians attacked from, and I mean, I wrote about it on Twitter. He wrote a story about his experience over the first 12 days, and it was just absolute hell. I mean, he barely survived. He lost everything he had. he got very, very lucky. He was able, after 12 days, he was able to make it out to Kiev, and he's now, I'm in touch with him all the time, but he's now in Kiev with the family of his friends. So they're keeping him safe. So it's just it's tragic. So for him, he's just kind of focused on surviving, and then there's other people who have an ability to help others, and they do, but most people are just trying to kind of survive, and everyone's just praying for this war to end soon.
Yeah.
And then from my side, that's what we've been focused on for the past 2 weeks. Is we've been focused on first working with refugees, basically connecting refugees who don't have a place to stay in Europe, because a lot of people have been reaching out to me offering a place to stay all throughout Europe. I have an Excel sheet. There's people from 16 different countries have reached out to me and have said, I have a place, I have this apartment, I have this home. If there's anyone that needs a place, just reach me out. And so that's kind of what I was doing for the first week or so with my wife and our friends, just connecting people, refugees who need a place to stay, with these generous people who are offering to help. And then now over the past week, we've also been focused a lot on actually getting money together to buy different humanitarian goods throughout Europe, and then working out the logistics about how to actually get it back to Ukraine. So even though we started like we partnered with my company. We partnered with the King Bedouin Foundation, which is a large kind of charity that works with NGOs that and a lot of people have been supporting that, which is great. But I've also thought it's important also to try and help people directly. So those are kind of more general. But so we started like a private group of people who are kind of putting money together, who are buying goods throughout Europe, and then people that we know, friends in Ukraine, that can actually deliver the goods from all the way, from the border of Ukraine all throughout, Kiev and Kharkiv, to where it's needed. So it's tricky. It's very complicated. But that's kind of what we've been focused on, because I feel like at least, that's the best that we can do while we are here.
Yeah, especially after, I mean, everybody, the response from everybody mostly in Europe is amazing. All the countries are helping a lot. I know so many people who is going to Ukraine to make voluntary. Even I know people who was living in Ukraine, Spanish people. In fact, this guy left the country a few days ago, that they didn't leave the country for the first days. They was helping women and kids, because you went to the Poland, especially Poland, because it was near to his city, the Poland border, and there was a long line, a queue with the women and kids, and that was very hard things to see. But at least he felt that he was making something very, very good for the people from Ukraine. So this is very nice. And I guess the most important thing right now, the most difficult thing, is not to get the supplies. It's even to bring it to Ukraine, where
Exactly.
important.
Exactly, you're absolutely right. There is plenty of supplies. There's plenty of money already kind of flowing in. The biggest problem is actually just logistics. Is basically getting it, to the needed places. Like maybe you've heard in the news, like the big, one of the most conflicted cities in Ukraine is called Mariupol. It's a city all the way in the east. It's between Donbass and Crimea, and it's a key city for Russia that they needed to kind of take over to create like a land bridge between Russia and Crimea. It's a city of about 300,000 people, and it's been shelled and just really been getting demolished. And now I believe it's kind of like almost surrounded by Russians. And the problem is the people are running out of food and water, and there's been 5 different tries that there's like a huge convoy of humanitarian goods that's been like 300 tons, I believe, of humanitarian goods that's been trying to enter, but they just can't, and they won't let people leave, and they won't let humanitarian goods
In
enter.
fact, I saw that the Russians are now bombing the supply storage. They bombed like the last night or 2 nights ago, 2 of them, that there was the more important storage supplies for food and
Yeah,
and
unfortunately, this is kind of from their playbook of what they do in in every country that they kind of enter. Because basically, as I understand it, it's they do this to create panic in the people and the citizens, because then the citizens can apply pressure to their own government, to Zelensky's government, to to just kind of end it. Please just agree to anything. So for him, it's just it's one of the most brutal tactics you can do, because you're literally starving and killing regular people to apply pressure to the government so that he can, so that Putin can get what he wants. So this is like a well-known, Russian tactic, and unfortunately, one that they've been deploying in Ukraine thus far. But having said that, even now, right before we jumped into this call, I've been reading news over the past couple of hours that apparently that it looks like there might be a deal coming soon.
yeah, they I read something that they cannot join anymore the OTAN, but they will make some kind of deal. I guess what Russia is pretending now is try not to not stop the connection between OTAN with Ukraine, because in the moment they join the OTAN or NATO, they will be so much protected than they are right now.
Exactly. So the way the situation is now is like Russia really lost big. They cannot win this war. It's been clear for a week. They've completely underestimated the Ukrainian army and Ukrainian will, and actually the Russian army was, everyone was kind of afraid of it, but it turned out not to be as scary as everyone thought.
They are very scary. In fact, their own soldiers that they don't even know what they're doing there.
Exactly. Yeah. So it was just a complete mess of an attack, of an invasion from them, and they realized that they cannot win. So now you see them changing the story as to what they would agree on. So obviously, for there to be any deal, the Russians need to be able to tell their own people that we won somehow, right? So and that is basically things like, okay, well, Ukraine is never going to join NATO, so so we won. Or but what does that mean exactly? This is going to be up to negotiations, because obviously Ukraine, while it will officially never join NATO, there will be security deals where if Russia does ABC, the European countries will do XYZ. So there will be security agreements that I suspect, which will kind of protect Ukraine and guarantee security for Ukraine, but officially it won't be NATO. So this would allow Putin to go to his people and say, we got what we wanted and we won, and Ukraine and the Ukrainian and Zelensky to go to Ukrainians and say, we got what we wanted. We Russians are out. We got security and security from Europe, even though it's not officially NATO. So this is I guess a way out of this nightmare. But so let's see. I mean, it's just the very beginning of the road, but we're all kind of hopeful that that they can find an agreement.
In fact, one of the strongest points by Ukraine is coming now from Europe, from the Euro president, from I think is the president from Poland, from I don't remember exactly but there are three presidents right now in leading.
It's not presidents.
It's
three prime ministers. It's
three prime
Polish,
ministers, yes, exactly.
Czech, and Slovakian prime
they
ministers.
Are in Kiev located, which they cannot basically do nothing. In the moment they do something to one of those three guys, the NATO and the OTAN is gonna go for Russia.
It's not clear what NATO would do, but it would be a big escalation for Russia to hurt those people. So, and it's honestly, like, I get goosebumps. Like, it's incredibly brave of those men, of those prime ministers, to travel to Kiev at this time. And honestly, like, that move is better than closing the air. I mean, because those are all escalatory moves, and this move, it's just brave and powerful, and it really makes it very difficult for Russia to carpet bomb Kiev. Very, very difficult. So yeah, let's see. I hope it stays this way.
I'm gonna put it here for everybody. This is I'm putting on the screen. You don't see it right now, Eugene, the tweet from Ian Bremmer that that I saw thanks to you because you just retweeted or like it or something like this, where he's saying that he says extraordinary move will be for the Prime Minister of Poland, Czech, and Slovenia to stay in Kiev. This will be a massive, like a power for to fight against this, because basically Russia can do nothing. Or if they do something, do you think it could be the Third World War if they do something in Kiev during this stay?
The chance is always there, right? But the Russians are also aware of this, and the Russians are aware of this. They don't want a third world war, right? They want the threat to be there, but for them, like a third world war for Russia is suicide, essentially, right? Like it's
probably suicide for the world.
It's for the world, yeah, but it includes Russia, right? So it includes them also. It's not, they can't win a third world war, right? So it just means destruction for everyone, including themselves. So I think the hope is that there isn't any one person that can just go crazy and start sending nuclear bombs. I think even in Russia, there's a certain chain of command that you have to go through before any kind of nuclear weapons are used. And the hope was always that even if it gets that bad, even if, let's say, Putin loses his mind and sees no way for him to survive and just says
even more,
F it, I'm just gonna destroy everything. Like, he has to give those orders to someone. It's not like there's some button that he presses and nuclear bombs fly. He has to give those orders to to different generals, and those generals, for them to carry those out, they have to know that it's suicide. It's their families are going to suffer. Their kids, their parents, those generals' parents are going to suffer. So I don't think it's very likely that it would lead to world war. But obviously, it's not impossible, and any chance that's above zero is scary, because it literally ends everything. So that's not a place where anyone wants to be.
Okay, before we go back, because I want to talk about your own story that is very important, and this is why I start to read all your posts when you start. You named it before Zelensky. For those who don't know, I was in Ukraine in 2019, exactly during the votation, during the week, the weekend that there was the votation during when Zelensky wins, and I had the feeling in that moment that everybody wanted something new. Everybody was tired of the old management, that there was, even it's supposed to be against Russia, but it looked like even it was like surrender to Russia before it started everything. And when Zelensky won, that for those who don't know the story, Zelensky was a comedian before, but and many people didn't respect him because he was a comedian before, even if he was he had a degree and he was supposed to be very good. He is now become like a hero in Ukraine. What do you think about Zelensky, and how do you see everything what he's doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, basically, it goes back to 2014 when Russia took over Crimea and then separated the Donbass region. Basically, it was like a de facto kind of war with Russia, and ever since then, the presidents of Ukraine have been trying to settle, create some sort of settlement and figure a way out of this. And that's what Zelensky was kind of also promising, that he would find a way to end this war.
In fact, Eugene, during the election, there is so many people that is right now so much confused with Zelensky, because when he won the election, his idea was not to fight against Russia. Was basically opposite. Was basically say, I'm gonna fix this problem in the most quiet way possible. And now when Russia came inside, everybody was like, okay, he's gonna pull back, but he didn't pull back. He was pushing to Russia, and that's why he became some kind of hero right now in Ukraine.
Yeah, actually, Zelensky's popularity was actually quite low right before the invasion, and a lot of people, actually most people that I know, they didn't like Zelensky's politics. He was actually considered kind of weak in a lot of ways. like his popularity ratings was like, I think it was like in the low 20% in right before the invasion. So I think that also played to the calculation that I imagine Putin probably made as to why it would be easy to topple the government, right? But he literally, I mean, I don't know if I don't know if I've ever seen anyone make such a 180-degree turn because at the invasion, I mean, he just proved to be a man of, I don't know how else to put it, just like with steel balls. I mean,
Yeah.
he stayed in
And
Kiev.
he looks basically opposite at the beginning when everything
Exactly,
started. Even he won because
exactly.
he pretend to be fixing the problem without even making a problem. And when the problem came, he faced it with a fucking strong
Yeah,
hand.
and he proved himself like to be like a. I don't know if you've seen. There's like this famous meme, the difference between a leader and a boss. Like
Yeah.
a boss is someone who like whips his the people in front of him and sits behind them while they move
Yeah.
forward, whereas a leader is in front, carrying all his people to follow him, right? So basically, here it's like to show that like Putin is sitting in this bunker and hiding and trying to push
Yeah.
all his people, to fight, whereas Zelensky is in the front lines, putting his own life in danger, right? By
And
saying
his
all the things
wife.
that he's saying,
And his wife as well,
and
because
his
his
wife,
wife
and
didn't want to leave.
exactly. So I think this is actually a really, really important point in general for leaders. Is when people know that your leader's life is on the line when they are, saying something. That means something very, very different than when the leader sends his army but does not stand to lose anything himself. That's the
Yeah.
concept of skin in the game. Like you have skin in the game. So basically, then people will follow you because they know that you will lose everything that I will lose.
Do you
If
think
this goes wrong.
this strongness by Zelensky is what is giving the Ukrainian population the strongness to fight against Russia when they supposed to be much more smaller than them?
I think it helped an incredible deal. I think he inspired so many people with his leadership. I think he inspired. I mean, everyone who I know now in Ukraine, like on day two of day one or day two of the invasion, was like, "Oh my God, Zelensky is an absolute hero!" Like everyone just like loves him, supports him, and everyone's just kind of worried for his safety. But everyone was kind of like, "Wow, like this is a guy we want to follow," um, and yeah, he just inspired everyone to stand their ground and not let the Russians win. It's just been incredible to see, honestly, and I think it's also important for the world to see in general what true leadership
Yeah.
can do. What
Especially,
you know what
especially
and bravery also, and bravery, like what
especially
showing
seeing
bravery.
the leaders we have right now in the world, that many of them are
Exactly,
like Putin. Not
exactly,
they are not leader, they are boss, as you say. Many of them
exactly.
in Spain we have one of the boards, not the prime minister, but the prime minister, the rival, the other rival,
Mm,
the opponent,
mm,
everybody. We have so many boss, but no, we don't have any leader. So right
yeah.
now it's a huge thing what Zelensky is doing, not only for his country but the whole world.
Exactly. So I completely agree with you. It's not. I mean, I don't know the Spanish politics, but certainly like in the U.S., like it's just
It's
everywhere, all
basically the
all around
same.
the world. It's just everywhere. You see like weak leadership and people, because I think the reason for that is because we have not seen a huge conflict take place in our lifetimes, right? Like we've never seen a war in our lifetimes, or even in our parents' lifetimes, like a real war. So people have forgotten, and then they started to disqualify these qualities of leadership because maybe it's not important, right? But then when something like this happens, you realize why it's so important to have an inspiring leader, a brave leader, like and then why it brings people together, and how important it is for people to kind of
Mhm.
to be together and have singular focus, how strong that makes a country. So I do hope that will be an example for the rest of the world. And I suspect you may see even in future elections, all throughout the world, the leaders being elected with these types of qualities.
So I hope there is one saying in Spain is like saying something like, if we have something bad, at least let's take the good part. So in this case, nobody want that. Nobody want that this takes longer. but at least I hope we learn from this. Not only the politician, but also the people who vote, because this is the more important. The politician can do whatever they want, but if the people who vote, then we are the responsible people from
It's like,
putting them in the power.
Francisco, this is like where you can actually connect this to poker, right? Or to anything else, really. Like the best way to learn poker is through your mistakes, right? Like it's the more you lose, the more mistakes you make. That's how you learn, because it's painful, right? So you can kind of see the Ukraine crisis in a similar way. It's been very painful and tragic, but at least let's try to learn from this. What can not just Ukraine, but what can the world learn from this? So I do hope that's if you zoom out over the next 10, 20 years, hopefully we'll see the world evolving in a better way.
Okay, let's go a little bit back, and can you explain us how was the live in the country? Because I was reading your post. First of all, why posted on Twitter? Like, what was the idea with that? Was to help other people to know what's going on, to help people outside from the country, or just to help people from the own country to say, look, here is complicated, don't go there. Here is no gas. What was the idea to post all this?
So the idea was, let's put it this way. I haven't been posting on Twitter much over the past couple of years.
Yeah, that's why I say.
So yeah, and I think when we started to make our way out of Kiev, I thought, okay, we were I was so wrong about the expectation of Russia not going to invade, and I saw how much propaganda was coming from their side about what's happening and what's not happening. So I thought maybe I can do my little part about actually providing at least a perspective from my point of view of what's happening. It was a very scary moment. You didn't know what was going on. We were literally seeing huge bombs go off, near us. And I just wanted to show. I wanted to give people a glimpse into what's happening, because it's so scary and it's so life-changing that it's hard to imagine unless you're actually there. So I thought maybe at least if I can give a real-time account of what's happening, not afterwards, but actually during it, while I'm feeling it, right? Like while I'm feeling all this pressure, I thought that could give an insight for people to follow. And ultimately, my hope was that if more people can follow this, if more people can learn about this, of what the tragedy is happening in Ukraine, the message will spread, and then at least the world can come and support Ukraine in this. And that's kind of you can see that's kind of what's happened. So my hope was that maybe I can play some small little part in that, amongst many others, to kind of to show the truth of what's going on. So that was the basic idea, and it was also, for me, it was also like it was kind of nice to release some of these
this
feelings
is what
I was feeling inside.
It was kind of a release for you, like
it was a release
throw it out
on one side,
all the problem, all the fear, and I'm fine. It looked like this.
That, and also honestly, it was incredible to to feel all the support that people were sending me. Like there were people who were sending me all these positive messages, like wishing me luck, and it was just incredible. Like it was really, really touching. You felt this energy of support, and people kind of rooting and cheering for you to get out safely. And that was honestly beautiful. And I and at that point I was like, well, I have to keep sharing my experience. And then as soon when I was leaving Ukraine, the only thing I was thinking about is like just focus on actually crossing the border. I wasn't thinking where I'm going to be, what I'm going to do after. The focus there was just on actually surviving, essentially. And then as soon as we crossed the border, as soon as we breathed out, immediately all of our thoughts came, okay, now how can we help others? What can we do? And I thought, okay, the best thing I can do with Twitter is actually to now tell stories about people who are still in Ukraine, what's going on. People tell stories about people, the refugees escaping. And the great thing about that was that it led to people reaching out to me and offering to help.
You were saying now about the borders. But it was not an easy as you say, because you try to go a final round. Your idea was to go to Poland, then to Romania, then to Hungary. How was the
Yeah.
whole story about the living,
Yeah,
the
it
road?
was.
Because I guess will be very hard. First of all, to find a place to sleep, find a place to put gas, because all the country ran out of gas, to get supplies. So how was the story?
Yeah, so it's definitely it was a crazy story. I mean, when we first left Ukraine, when we first left Kiev, sorry, when we first left Kiev, early in the morning, it was like 7:30 in the morning. We barely packed one bag, just put a few pieces of clothing together. I took like one or two sweaters, some a couple of sneakers and two pairs of sports pants. That's it. Like we barely took anything with my wife. And then we called up our friends and we agreed that we would meet up at our friend's parents' place, which was outside of the city. It was about 35 kilometers outside of Kiev. It was like a small little village, a small little country home. So we decided that it might be safer than being in Kiev. So that's where we headed early in the morning. We were able to just barely beat the traffic. Like we escaped. We lived in the center of Kiev, and traffic was just starting. It was really kind of scary because you could see there was way more people out in the streets than normally at this time, and you could see people were kind of pale in the face, like the panic was starting to set in, and then like people were just carrying luggages on streets, kind of making their way to the buses, making their way to trains, like people, everyone just got, there were huge lines to ATM
Everything
machines.
was overbooked, and
Yeah,
in
no,
the
no, no,
road, in the gas, in the buses,
yeah,
in
yeah.
train, everywhere.
And we didn't know whether we would be able to get gas because traffic was insane. So we were able to make it out of the city. We stayed in that village home. When we got to the village home, this was Thursday, afternoon. We thought maybe we would stay here a couple of days and then, decide what to do, like see how the situation
Hmm.
evolves. So we rented a hotel nearby just to sleep, but we were gonna, actually just spend time with the friendly family that took us in. And um, so the first, I would say, 4 or 5 hours, we thought we would just stay for like 2 3 days. We thought because the reason we didn't want to go to the border was number one, traffic was becoming an absolute nightmare. It's
Everybody
about six.
will go the first days to the borders, I
Yeah,
guess.
it was about 600 kilometers to the border, and there was no
To
guarantee
which
that gas
border?
that gas
To
station.
Poland?
We didn't know. I mean, any of the borders really. I mean,
Yeah,
we
you
were
were
thinking about.
in the
I
middle,
knew
no?
a lot of. I knew a lot of people were going to the Polish border, but distance-wise, it's about the same to 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 any of the borders, whether it's Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, or Moldova. Um, so the scariest part was imagine being stuck on the highway with traffic with no gas, and you're somewhere midway and you can't go anywhere because you run out of gas, and now you're in the car with no gas in the middle of nowhere, right? So we were like, maybe it's just safer to stay in a warm home to see how things play out. So it was
Hmm.
not an easy decision, but at some point in the evening we did hear that there was gas available in gas stations, throughout, especially as you got closer to the west of the country. So we made a decision. We were very tired because we basically didn't sleep the night before. We only slept for a couple of hours. So we made the decision to sleep for maybe 3 4 hours and then leave at 5 in the morning to leave the country home and then start heading to the border, to the Polish border.
Hmm.
So we went to sleep. At 5 in the morning, we wake up. There's already kind of like bombs going off in the distance, which is scary. Like because we're near Kiev, so we know what's happening. It's hard to describe the kind of emotions you're feeling. You're just on pure adrenaline. We quickly get up. We start heading out. Um, and literally like 10 minutes as soon as we get on the road, we hit our first check post, like a block post, it's called. I've never been to one. Basically, it's something that basically where they put concrete blocks on the middle of the road, right? Like a maze, and there were basically like 10 or 15 guys standing with Kalashnikovs, very serious looking. So it's scary, right? Like you don't know what they're gonna do. You don't know who they are. You don't know if they're Ukrainians, if they're Russians. You just don't know. but you can't go anywhere else. So you pull up, you roll your window down. They're like, who are you? Where are you going? They ask to see your paperwork. And thankfully, they let us go, and we started to make our way west. We knew at that point we should avoid all the big cities. So we decided to we found a route that avoided all big cities because we knew they were being bombed already from planes, from Russian planes. So we knew we had to go through small little villages and just kind of little country roads. So we started to do that. As we drove, I mean, it was a long drive. Like it took us like 22 hours to get to the border. So as we drove, my wife would constantly look at the phone, look at the news, and every time we would hear that a city close to us was being bombed. So it just felt like it was just coming right behind us, like this, wall of fire or something scary. I would say probably like the scariest moment was when we were like 200 kilometers from the border, from the west border. We got stuck in really, really bad traffic because of another block post that was really, really slow for some reason.
This block post, I guess, is near to the border, but not in the border. So you have to go later to the border as well.
Yeah. It was still far. It was still like, I think it was 120 kilometers away from the border. But it was like in the middle of the mountains. So there's no way to go around. You just have to stay there. It was a massive, massive line. But the scary thing was on the news, we then heard that apparently like Ivano-Frankivsk, which is a city on the west of Ukraine, which was just bombed. And we heard that Chechen troops were landing somewhere nearby us. And I don't know if you've heard of like Chechen troops, like like Ramzan Kadyrov, like he's this Chechen warlord. They have like a reputation for brutality, and it's just scary because the Chechens, his troops have a reputation for just being brutal with citizens. You don't know what to expect. So that was definitely scary. But at some point, while we were stuck in traffic, I looked at Google Maps. And the interesting thing was that we're like, okay, well, we were at this point we were heading to the Hungarian border because Polish border was like the traffic was too crazy. And I look at Google Maps and I noticed that we're literally like 100 meters from Poland. So it was not an official border, but it was like the forest, right, of Poland or whatever.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh my God, we're literally like a stone throw from Polish border. And I realized, most likely Russians wouldn't dare attack this close to NATO territory, to this close. So it gave us a certain sense of safety, even though we were still far away from the actual border crossing. It gave us a sense of safety that we were so close to Europe, to the NATO border. So and then in the middle of the night we reached the border. We started then going to the Slovakian border. Then the line was really long there. We ended up going back to the Hungarian border. We got to the Hungarian border, I think, at around 3 a.m. And the line wasn't moving. So we just literally stopped on the side of the highway and, we thought, let's get at least a little bit of sleep. So we got like 4 hours of sleep just in the car. Woke up at, I guess it was like 6 a.m. or so, got back into the line and it started to move at about 7 a.m. And I would say by about 8 or 9 or 10, no, about 9 or 10 in the morning, it wasn't too long actually. We crossed the border into Hungary and essentially, when we were able to kind of truly feel safe.
For those who don't know how Ukraine borders works, this is the border I used to take, the Hungarian one, the one who is near Beregovo, is one of the biggest city that is near Hungarian. These borders are usually very, 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 very slow. So I cannot imagine how it was during this time. I guess they put you an easy way to go out, but then Hungary usually is super strong. They check every single baggage because this is a scenario where is very, people are used to move stuff like illegally, so they check all the baggage. So I guess during this time everything was smoother, because if not, it could be endless.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Basically, the line on the Ukrainian side, when we got there, I mean, we um uh basically we were lucky because it still wasn't that long. It was only like 2-3 hours long. Like it was reasonable. Whereas in Poland, it was now like it could be like a day long or something, or even more if you're by car. If you wanted to walk, it's like 30 kilometers. You can get out and walk if you can walk 30 kilometers. It's just a complete nightmare. And then we heard that the Hungarian border was reasonable, so we were kind of lucky. Then then the line got much longer. But yeah, but at this time, at least once you pass the Ukrainian border, the Hungarian customs, they were okay. Like they were not, they looked in the car. They didn't really like search the luggage too much. I think everyone understood that the situation is such that people are carrying all their valuables. People are escaping obviously with most of their valuables. So they just wanted to make sure you're not like you know carrying any weapons or something dangerous or hiding people or whatever. As long as you're not doing anything like that, they were kind of quick about it. So they,
So
they let us pass quickly.
this is another way to help the Ukrainian population, like not only just giving them food or a house or a bed or whatever, but also from the governments help them to go through the borders easily, because if not, this can be like an endless
Yeah,
way.
yeah, it really helped, and I heard Poland really like took it to the next level. They said that we don't even care if you don't have a passport, you can just come like that, and
Yeah.
that's why everybody went to Poland.
Hmm.
And I think that's why now Poland really got the brunt of it because I think it's like almost like 2 million people out of the 3 million refugees are in Poland, and I believe from what I understand they've now closed well, they're not accepting any more refugees. I think they're open to letting people in, but they're not accepting refugees because it's just so many people. So yeah, it's getting hectic. But in that sense, yeah, a lot of the European governments, thankfully, made it much easier to cross, which was obviously really important at that time.
Yeah, this is something I really love from all those countries. Estonia is also taking so many people and helping a lot. Georgia is amazing, the support is giving, because they suffer as well. In fact,
Yeah,
what is happening right now with Ukraine, it happened few years ago with Georgia, but it was super short. But all those countries that there were suffering the URSS, the Putin pressure during so many years, they are helping so much.
yeah,
What
yeah.
part surprised you or made you proud the most?
I think I completely agree, and I think the thing that touched me the most, and I mean, and I guess surprised me to some sense, is just how supportive people were along the way. How many incredible stories I've heard from my friends, and also just even from my own experience. I shared a lot of those experiences on Twitter. Like people, even in Budapest. When we were in Budapest, like a lot of people were like, "Oh, the politics of Hungary are kind of pro Putin or whatever. Be careful out there." But the regular people, like we would go into a restaurant and I remember the owner was like, "Oh, where are you guys from?" We're like, "Over for we just came from Ukraine." He's like, "Oh, 20% off for you guys," like right away,
Yeah.
like he didn't even care. Like that was just like one example. Then another example, we went to a cafe and this like tweet of mine went really viral. But basically, we were just sitting having breakfast. Me, my wife, and her friend. The waiter was super nice to us, and then some lady next to us, just a customer, she's like, "Oh, are you guys? Where are you guys from?" And we're like, "We're Ukraine. We're speaking Ukrainian." And then 20 minutes later, she's like on her way out, and she's like, "Oh, by the way, I took care of your bill." I was like, "Oh, thank you, but you don't need to do that. Like, I have money. I'm okay. We don't need." And she's like, I know, you don't look like you don't need help, but I just wanted to show, the
Yeah.
solidarity. I wanted to show, how we feel for you." And I was like,
It's, it's,
and my
it's,
wife,
it's much more about than the money,
yeah,
It's
it's not about the money. It's just to show that they feel the pain, and my wife started to cry. Like it was a very touching moment, um, and it was just incredible. Like we just stood up, like we hugged her, like it was just incredible. And then
yeah.
like 30 minutes later, after this was over, some guy comes up to us and he's like, gives me a business card. He's like, "If you need anything, any kind of help, just let me know. Call me. I will support you in any way you can. I need." So it's like all these stories and like also in Ukraine, even like a lot of my wife's family was coming out, and it took them 3 days to leave Kharkiv to get to the border, and they would have to sleep. They would have to find hotels along the way, and they told us stories of people, just like regular people, regular folks, in restaurants, not even accepting their money. They're like, just don't worry, just you'll need the money when you cross the border. Just this is on us. Like the food is on us. Don't worry about it. Just like all these incredible stories of people coming together and helping each other and others, in such a tragic, situation. So it really made me believe in the kind of like in the true human spirit, like that, how much love there is, and if you just get beyond the differences, deep down inside, there is a lot of good in people.
So this conflict is showing us the worst phase we ever have. Like, how is possible that in 2022 we still get a war? We are in risk of making the third world war, and then in the other side we have a solidarity that we never ever see. So it's
Exactly.
kind of very 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 polarized situation.
And that's why my hope is that I suspect, once we get out of this conflict, I feel like I'm very optimistic about the next, whatever, 10, 20 years in the world in general. I think the ugliness that this war did, but it shows the solidarity that people are capable of. I think it's going to also be a really important history lesson for other countries that may have been considering to attack other countries. Like when they see the whole world, I mean, Russia's economy is just dead. Like they literally just destroyed it, demolished it, their economy. So it's like, it's literally, I think
it's not only the economy, it's also the supplies, it's also the
everything, just everything.
Even a single no important thing, of course, but this some meaning thing is the sport. The sport are blocking all the Russian that they don't even have. They are not responsible for that, but they are showing like, if you support your country, if your own country, your own population is not forcing Putin go out from this conflict, you're gonna be by yourself. That this is basically what they wanted at the beginning, but they didn't realize how strong it can be this for the economy, for the supplies, for everything about Russia.
And I think the reason for that is because people still thought of war as something from 50 or 100 years ago, when countries were not so interconnected as they are today. Economies are so interconnected. Like countries rely on each other, on their partnerships, like way more than they ever did in the past. Mm-hmm. And I think through this war, it shows that when you're disconnected, how painful it can be when suddenly everybody disconnects one country, and how painful it can be. So I think I hope and I suspect that other countries will really think carefully before doing something like this in the future, because essentially it's like committing suicide. It's economic suicide, essentially.
This is also a misconception of how is working the business right now. Before, you make in your own country wine, you make food, you make IT stuff. Right now, is the country who is making more profitable way. One thing is making it and then export it. So right now, if you cannot get the IT from China, if you cannot get the food from Spain, if you cannot get the wine from France, for example, so you are going to run out of so many things. So at the end, you're going to need years to build one chain that is going to be working.
It's people don't even realize how bad it is, because it's not just like cars or luxury goods. It's even things like, it's even things like, I heard a story like, now even dentistry in Russia, like they rely on German parts to fix teeth. Like even like they can't even get those now. Like it's just like little things. Like it's just everything is connected, and it's like they will not have anything. And honestly, like I feel bad for the Russian population, because they are going to suffer for this, But I feel like it's also like it's an example for the world. So if you like zoom out, they serve as an example for the world why you can't do things like this.
It's a good way to remove ideas from other people to do in the future, and especially
Through pain, right?
From Putin. Like,
Yeah,
imagine this is gonna be an easy way. Like, he going to Ukraine, he destroy everything, he gets Crimea and all this part that he's interested on. Okay, next week, next year, let's go to Georgia, and let's go to.
exactly.
This is
Yeah,
gonna be.
yeah. He would just keep expanding because why? Why not? So it would not stop. It would not have stopped with Ukraine. If he would have conquered Ukraine, it wouldn't have stopped at Ukraine. So, um,
It's a
but
good.
you know,
It's a good stop for this type of people.
I hope so. You know, so so far it's looking good, and I hope it doesn't escalate to anything scary. Because when you hear these stories about Russians are now threatening with like biological or chemical weapons,
This
and
will
then
be
like nuclear, like that
the end,
is
basically.
yeah. So let's hope it doesn't get to that.
So let's move into poker. At the end, this is a poker talk. Poker is
Sure.
the most important thing from the less important things. It's like poker is meaningless right now in this whole situation. But this is a poker channel, so let's talk about poker. What do you get from the poker community about solidarity, about helping each other, about supporting, about charity? What do you get from all this about poker?
The poker community is honestly like it's just incredible. Like it's it's not like as big as some other huge communities, but it's very it's solid in the sense that when they come together, they can really support an idea or a project or a person if needed. And as I've said, like the support that I've received from the poker community is just incredible. Like it just seemed like everybody was following me. Everyone, even people playing in tournaments, were like telling me, everyone is talking about the situation
It's
about
true.
when you were escaping and and then even now, like a lot of people are donating to the to different foundations. People are reaching out to me like, how can I help? What can I do? Where can I send money for this money to be most effective? Some people have reached out. They're like, oh, I'm gonna donate some percent of my winnings to to help Ukraine. So it's just incredible to see this kind of thing. Honestly, like I'm very very proud of the poker. Even though I haven't been playing poker professionally for the last 3-4 years. I did play professionally for 13 or 14 years. So it was a huge part of my life. I continue to absolutely love poker, and my personal poker story was always like I didn't want to be a professional poker player anymore. It's not that I didn't love poker anymore. It's just I wanted to become a recreational player. I wanted to go back to being a recreational player
It sounds
and enjoy
familiar to
poker.
me.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm also, as I said, I'm grateful to poker for lots of different things. Especially like this idea that I mentioned that I mentioned earlier in our talk about the only way to learn is to learn from losses, to learn from mistakes. I
Mistakes.
think that's a very powerful lesson in life, in business, everywhere. You learn from mistakes. If you just always win or nothing bad happens to you, you don't really learn. You're just so you become vulnerable. So I think it's important. It's to make yourself strong. You have to go through pain. You have to go through some amount of pain, through some amount of mistakes. So, and I think poker is a really, really good teacher for that.
There is so many solidarity in poker right now. There is so many things, so many organizations, so many player itself by itself that is organizing like food, like everything. I'm gonna name few of them that I guess you are in touch with them. Some of them. One of them is Rob Young, that he is making through his casino in Dutch Still Down. He's sending suppliers and food. He's not only sending it like, okay, I get it, I have the money, I put the money and I send it. He is also driving, one of his workers is driving a van with all the supplies, which is solving the problem about the shipping. The shipping is we were talking about before.
Yeah,
It's easier to get
yeah.
the supply than ship the supply. So he is shipping the supply. So this is amazing. Also, Orphan, the Turkish high stake player that I think is also not professional. He said that he will match any donation up to 10K. I think one more player joined the cause, and in total they make, or even the own Rob Young say that he will put the same money. So at the end they reached the maximum that was 20K, 10 each. So they put 20K themselves. So this is a lot of money that can help a lot of people. And also Leon Sukarnik, the owner of Kings Casino, that he was, as I say, out of the camera.
Maybe I can speak to that also, because I'd really like to speak about what Leon did.
Yeah, this is where I wanna stop. I don't know if you have contact with the other two situation, but Leon Sukarnik, the owner of Kings Casino in Rosbadov, that, as I'd say before the conversation start, he was my boss or my partner, because I was running the SPF in Kings, so I know everybody in Kings, Juan, Leon, and I know how solidarity is Leon. Leon, for those who don't know, put over 500 refugees on houses, or his houses that he have in his own property, or a rent house around Rosbadov.
Hotels. He literally rented full, like 4 or maybe even more now, but 4 hotels.
Even better.
Just yeah.
And he's providing the food. He's providing even if they want a job for them, if they want to stay in Rosbadov or in the area. So it's amazing.
Yeah,
let's talk about those three. I guess the Leon initiative is the one you have more knowledge.
Sure, I'm directly connected with. Yeah, I'll start like with Rob Young. I'm not directly connected with him. I mean, he obviously he was one of the people also like supporting everything I've been doing on Twitter. But I haven't been like directly connected into what he's doing. But it's great to hear that he's actually sending his own truckers, because that's similar to what I've been trying to do, is like actually find people on the ground because you can send money, but then you don't know where it goes. But it's much different when the people bring these things to people who need. So that makes it much more efficient. And sorry, what was the second?
The second was the orphan.
Orphan. Yeah. I heard he was going to donate a large portion of like any EPT winnings, and he's going to match.
He made the final table of the 50K. So I guess this is another extra money for his initiative. So it's great.
Yeah, that's just an example of like the wonderful people we have, in the poker world. So honestly, it's amazing to see. Obviously when it comes to Leon, basically when I was in Budapest, we were in Budapest for a week. We decided to stay in Budapest because we wanted to be close to the border in case, we need to go to the border or any kind of help. My wife was thinking about helping kind of logistically or bringing things if needed to the border. So we thought we would stay close. Then after about a week, we thought, what should be our next step? We realized physically we don't need to be that close to the border, so we were like thinking where to go next. And for me, I'm obviously flexible. I have funds. Like I don't need any kind of help. But we wanted to be close to my wife's family, to friends, so we were going to follow them wherever they go. At the time, the options that they were considering were Germany or Spain, because those were the only 2 countries that were officially accepting refugees at the time, in terms of like giving them refugee status, giving them some money, some financial stipend, and a place to live. The great thing about Spain, we were actually really much more considering Spain rather than Germany, was because in the south of Spain there's a large Ukrainian population already, and it's relatively
in Malaga, in Marbella, is full of Russian. In fact, not more than Ukrainian even. So this is something we need to talk later, like how it's gonna be the situation when Ukrainian and Russian people meet each other.
Let's
talk about Leon now.
Let me finish. With Leon, then we can talk about that. But so at the time we were thinking about Spain, also because it was relatively inexpensive compared to other places in Europe. And just a lot of good things about Spain. The only negative is just it was really, really far. It would take us like maybe 3 days to drive there.
You will go by car, I guess, no?
Yeah, we were go by car. I actually didn't have my car. We left my car behind because my car, I had a sedan and we didn't think it would make it. So we actually left my car behind in Ukraine and just jumped into the car of my wife's friends because they had SUVs. So they're much better on like
Yeah,
off road. So my car is still there. I mean, 99% of my stuff is still in Kiev. So, I
it's
don't know if I'll ever
a
see it again.
horrible
I hope I'll see it.
situation.
But anyways, that's a different story. Um, Regardless, thankfully, because I'm an American citizen, my banking is done in the U.S. Like, so financially, I have a business in the U.S. as well. So I'm much better off than many
Hmm.
of our friends. So I don't need the support. But and then at that point, I was speaking to Elke, who I'm sure everybody from poker will know, and he's one of my best friends. And he told me that Leon was, doing this initiative for refugees, and I got it. I knew Leon as well personally, and he put me in touch. We jumped on a video call with Leon, and Leon's like, "Oh, you guys should just come to Czechia. I have, I rented 4 hotels. I'm doing all this sorts of help. You can stay as long as you want, whatever you want." And it was just like incredible. He was like, um, "You can stay comfortably in hotels. It's a beautiful little city. We'll cover breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I have a lawyer working to support refugees with paperwork. I'm going to provide jobs to everybody who wants." It was just like, I was like, wow.
Wow,
So I explained it to everyone,
amazing.
and we decided to make our way to Czechia. I told Leon I won't need the help. I rented an Airbnb in Marienbad. Because I don't want to take advantage of this when I don't need. I would rather leave a place for an extra refugees that it needs. But we wanted to be close to family, so we're nearby here. We rented an apartment. But the rest of like Anna's friends, family, and literally over 500 refugees from Ukraine are staying in these hotels. They have food. They're literally like they're way better off than a lot of other refugees right now, who are just don't have it as good. So it's still a tragedy, but Leon has been absolutely incredible here in Czechia. He also brought like huge groups of people out to Rozvadov, to the casino. He showed them around. He said, if you want, I can get anybody who wants a job. I can get you a job in the casino, in the hotel, or in Prague, and in other businesses that he's working on. He will help you with paperwork to make sure everything's kind of legal. So
This is
he's like
moving, man.
just it's absolutely incredible, what he's done. So people literally can't thank him enough. I can't thank him enough, for doing this for my wife, for my wife's family, for their friends, for so many Ukrainian people. And yeah, Leon's just been honestly just been incredible here.
And for those who want to help right now, what do you think is the best way to help? Like, I guess if they contact with you, you can just put them then in the right direction. Like, about if they want to give money, if they want to give shell, they want to give whatever. So what do you think is the best way, or just not only the best way, but also the more important thing right now to give away?
So I think right now, I mean, obviously the situation changes all the time, but it really depends on what people can give. The people who can provide a place to stay, uh, I was trying to connect people manually, but that doesn't work so efficiently. So recently, all the people who've reached out to me, where I've been sending them, because I was also speaking with Airbnb. Airbnb launched this initiative, this nonprofit initiative, where people can essentially offer their homes, on the platform of Airbnb for free to Ukrainian
Wow.
refugees. So I've been sending people there. That's something that people can do who have a
Okay.
place to stay or a free room. They can do that. It's Airbnb.org. But again, I can send a link if needed. And then if you want to help financially, if as I've said, me, my company Clash, and all of us, we partnered with King Bedouin Foundation. It's a they are a very famous kind of foundation working with different charities, different NGOs. So they've essentially partnered with, all the money that they collect goes through for this purpose will go to 3 different NGOs. One is the Polish Red Cross. Second one is People in Need, which is a Czech charity, a famous one. And the third one is Caritas. It's a Ukrainian charity. All of these are like 20 plus years old, kind of, with a really, really good reputation. And the reason I like King Bedouin was they're a worldwide organization. They're very famous and they're transparent about where the funds goes, because a lot of these foundations,
this is very important, because you don't even know where is going your money when you give away something. So it's very nice when they explain you every single detail of
they told us for them, all the money that goes to them, they keep 5% of the money for the costs, but 95% of the money is then evenly split between those NGOs, those charities that are literally helping refugees and helping Ukrainians. So we thought, at least that 95% of the money that you donate will go directly to help the Ukrainians. So it was important for us to partner with a famous, charity with a well-known brand. So I would point people there who want to support financially.
That's great. So your Twitter, that is where it is easier to contact with you, is Eugene Kachalov. Is the same like your name, if I'm not wrong. So everybody can write you there, and you will help them. And I'm gonna ask you the last two questions. The last one, the before last one is, what do you think is gonna be about Ukraine for the next few years? Like, I guess it's gonna need time to be rebuilt, but what do you think is going to be about Ukraine, about the European Union, the OTAN, all this political situation, but also about the way they will live?
It's a complex question. I think the way I see it is, I certainly think that at the end of this conflict, the world will come together and will, pour a lot of money into rebuilding Ukraine, kind of like a Marshall Plan for Ukraine, kind of like the way they did for Germany after World War II and for Japan after World War II. For those people who don't know, like the Marshall Plan was, they kind of learned the lesson after World War I, because Germany was not rebuilt after they lost World War I, and then they were really kind of angry, and they attribute a lot of the rise of Hitler because they were not rebuilt. So after that, the world kind of decided, okay, even though we need to help countries rebuild. So I do expect something like that to happen in Ukraine. So I think there's going to be a lot of money flowing into it, a lot of rebuilding going on. So that's definitely a huge positive and a huge boost. I would say a fear of mine is that over these last 3 weeks, even if the conflict ends soon, so the Ukrainian people have seen so much destruction and so much bloodshed, it's hard for people to just revert back to normalcy. Like, after you've seen something like that, it's very hard for you to go back to normal. And right now, right, like, everyone is focused on defeating the enemy, right? Like, there's one enemy, which is Putin, right? Like, so the focus is on defeating him. But when that enemy is gone, one way or another, if there's no enemy, like, those people are still angry. Those,
and scared, I guess.
The population is angry. The population, is going to, hate Russians for a long, long time. It's going to hate Russian speakers for a long, long time. And that's the real tragedy here. And I just don't know, and now there's so many guns and weapons, throughout Ukraine. I fear that crime, may skyrocket, so.
In fact, it's legal right now to wear an arm right now in Ukraine, because they have the law that every civil person, every citizen, you can have a gun.
I believe so. I believe, I don't know exactly how the law works, but yeah, a lot of regular citizens have guns, and I mean, normally I'm not, I'm kind of neutral on it, because in the U.S. you have a lot of similar things.
Yeah,
but it's scary when it's a population that just came out of war that has guns, right? That not just came out of war,
with the anger,
with the anger, with a lot of destruction, where people have lost literally everything they had. Like, I know so many people, like so many friends who were successful business people. They've had multiple businesses. They've lost everything. They've lost, like, cash. They had businesses. It's just,
they don't have anything to lose, and this is very, very, very dangerous.
And that's scary, because there's gonna be a lot of anger. especially towards people who maybe have things. So that this is kind of where I fear for what's going to happen in Ukraine. But I do hope that the world will kind of come together and support Ukraine and help it get past this. That's kind of where my hope lies. But yeah, that's kind of how I see it. I see it as a balance of a lot
Yeah.
of support from the outside, but a
Mhm.
lot of troubles from the inside to rebuild.
My last question, you were talking a little bit about this. This is one of the problem that the war is going to leave behind is about the conflict between the Russian normal citizen. We are talking about the military, about the government, about the politician, about the just normal people from Ukraine, normal people from Russia. When they meet each other in a foreign
Mm.
country, we are talking that in the south of Spain, for example, in Marbella, is full of Russian people. Very near is one community of Ukrainian people. Do you think it's gonna be a problem, or it could be problem in the future with all those two communities when they meet each other in one situation like that,
I
or even or
unfortunately
even
I
in the
yeah.
daily basis when you have a, a, a neighbor that is Russian and you are Ukrainian?
Unfortunately, I think there will be a lot of problems. I wish there weren't, because there's so many, there's so many Russians who've reached out to me, and I just know there's so many normal Russians who are just as horrified as we are as to what has happened. And a lot of them have tried to escape Russia, to escape from exactly, that regime. And so they don't deserve any of this. But unfortunately, the world doesn't work that way. Unfortunately, people do look for a place to hate, and especially if you see Ukrainians who've lost everything, and they may have a need to take their anger out on someone, and they
To
may do
fight
this on,
back.
on some Russian person. And unfortunately, yeah, I do expect that. So that's definitely a tragedy, and I do feel bad for a lot of Russians, because at least as Ukrainians, everyone is kind of like welcoming you with open arms, right? Like everyone is kind of the refugees are welcome. I think a lot of the Russians who are trying to escape Russia, they don't see that. For them,
They
it's just
are
like
most of
everyone is like
them, they
spitting on
are
them.
denigrated, like they don't want them.
Exactly, exactly, and that's a tragedy, and I don't know how you heal that. That's very difficult to heal, because imagine, as a Ukrainian, if you've lost everything, especially if you've lost family members, it's very difficult to forgive. It's very, very difficult to forgive, and I feel like this is something that can only heal with new generations. That it can take decades to heal. So yeah, that's definitely a fear of mine.
I hope this is not gonna be the legacy of the war, of the conflict,
Yeah.
because look like it's gonna be one part of the legacy of the conflict. But I hope this part of the legacy is gonna be smaller than that we think, because I also think it's gonna be like that, especially because I have Ukrainian friends, especially from Kings Casino,
Mm.
and many of them don't want to listen any word from any Russian people. So this is starting already.
Yeah.
So I hope this is not gonna be like that. This is the end of the talk. I appreciate it so much. First of all, because I understand that you are so busy right now with all the things you are doing. Also, because I guess it's not easy to talk about this situation in your own country. But as I think also that this is very, very, very important for the people who is seeing this from the sofa of his warm house,
Exactly.
to know what is going on there, how they can help, because we are thinking, okay, I don't have money, I cannot help. No, you can help with simply retweeting one information tweet or whatever. Everybody can help in their own way. So
Yeah, Francesca, honestly, that's exactly what I love that you said that, because that's exactly like my goal in doing these podcasts, and other podcasts and other interviews that I've done, is I want to bring light to this, as much light as I can to this situation, because I think it helps, people to see what's going on. So, and then people who want to support, as you said exactly correctly, even if you don't have money to help, if you don't have a place to stay to help, but just helping to spread the message already helps. It helps, because by spreading the message, it gets your leaders to listen, and then when the leader, why did Europe come out and support Ukraine so much? Because so many people came out in streets and showed solidarity with Ukraine, and then their leaders were like, the politicians were like, oh wow, okay, so there's so much support, so we can be brave and we can come together. for Ukraine and punish Putin for this. So that is important, and I think by spreading information, by spreading this message, you're already helping.
Okay, so thank you so much one more time, Eugene, and I hope everything is okay. And thank you not only for being in the interview, but also for all the help you are giving, even if it's your own country, but at the end, or the country where you were born, at the end is not about the country you are living or you are coming from, but also about helping the others. So thank you so much, and everything I can do for you or for this cause. So just let me know, and I will be so happy to help.
Thank you, Francisco, and thank you very much for helping to spread the message for everyone to listen.
Okay, bye.
Bye.